think for a moment. If you were around back in the 1800s, right, and you heard whispers like gold being discovered somewhere, wouldn't you just, rush there?
Oh, absolutely. Who wouldn't?
Of course. Well, that same kind of buzz, that same feeling of massive potential, that's what surrounds lithium today. It really is the 21st century's gold rush. Everyone's racing for it.
It certainly feels that way.
But what if, right in the middle of all this gold fever, this underdog quietly steps onto the scene?
An underdog.
Yeah, something super cheap, safe, and just everywhere. Like literally everywhere on Earth, even in your kitchen salt shaker.
Ah, okay. You're talking about sodium.
Exactly,
Yeah.
sodium. And people are starting to call it the future of batteries.
Mm-hmm. It's generating a lot of excitement.
So today we're doing a deep dive into why sodium is suddenly being seen as, well, maybe the new lithium. How it could seriously shake up the whole global battery market.
And crucially, India's role in all this.
Right. Is India just going to be watching this race from the sidelines? Or could it actually be leading it? That's our mission today. Understand this potential game changer.
Okay. And to really get why sodium is causing such a stir, we probably need to take a quick step back, look the current champion lithium. Why the initial obsession?
Good point. Let's unpack that. I mean, lithium really did become the absolute star player in, well, our modern tech world.
It's hard to imagine life without it now.
Totally. Think about it, your phone, your EV if you have one, even that little power bank you carry around.
All lithium ion.
All running on lithium-ion batteries. It's just fundamental to so much of daily life now.
Absolutely. It's become almost indispensable. But, and this is a big but, this star player has some pretty significant vulnerabilities.
Like what?
Well, mostly around where you actually find it and how much it costs. Lithium isn't exactly common dirt. The deposits, they're really concentrated in just a few spots globally. And that, creates geopolitical sensitivities, makes things tricky. Plus, limited availability just naturally pushes the price up.
And that sounds like a major headache for a country like India, doesn't it? I remember reading we're incredibly reliant on imports for lithium.
That's putting it mildly. India has very, very few lithium reserves of its own. We're talking like a staggering 99% dependence on imports for the battery-grade stuff.
99%. Wow.
Yeah. Now, connect that to the bigger picture. India has these huge ambitions for electric vehicles, right?
Huge. The government's pushing it hard.
But those plans are basically dependent on the decisions and the supplies controlled by the countries that dominate the lithium supply chain. And China holds a massive chunk of that, around 70%.
So we don't really control our own EV destiny in a way?
One of our sources put it quite bluntly. The on switch for India's EV revolution isn't in India's hands. It's in China's. It's a strategically, risky place to be.
Definitely a vulnerable position.
So the core insight here is that this heavy reliance on lithium imports, it's a significant risk for India's whole electric vehicle dream.
Okay, that makes the problem crystal clear. So let's pivot to sodium then. What makes this incredibly common element such a promising alternative, especially given those risks?
Well, the first thing, and it's huge, is just the sheer difference in availability. Sodium element number 11, on the periodic table, it's the 6th most abundant element on Earth.
6th most abundant. That's a lot.
It is. Just let that sink in. Unlike lithium, which you only find in specific geological pockets, sodium is, it's practically everywhere.
Everywhere,
Like in the oceans, obviously.
Yeah.
Huge amounts. But also across deserts, in the soil under our feet, and yes, like you said, in the salt we use every single day.
And India has plenty of it.
Oh, yes. India has massive sodium reserves, especially with its long coastline, along with countries like China, the U.S., and several nations in Africa. So the key thing is, sodium's widespread availability is a fundamental advantage over lithium scarcity.
Okay, abundance sounds great for supply chains. But what about the cost? You mentioned cheap earlier, and our source really highlighted a dramatic price difference.
Granic is the right word. The price disparity is...
Well, it's quite remarkable. Let me give you some numbers. Back in 2022, lithium carbonate prices peaked around $70,000 per ton.
70,000, okay.
Now, compare that to sodium carbonate. It usually trades somewhere between $300 and $400 per ton.
$300 versus 70,000? Different some shit. Wow.
Different some shit. The economic implications are just enormous. It could potentially lead to significantly cheaper batteries overall.
Okay, that's a game changer right there.
So the key takeaway, sodium could potentially slash the cost of making batteries drastically.
Right. So with this incredible abundance and this massive cost advantage, Could sodium just replace lithium completely? Like, is it a straightforward swap? Oh, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Huh?
And the nuanced answer based on the tech right now is probably not completely.
Yeah.
Not yet, anyway. Lithium still holds an edge in certain performance areas, especially energy density, which we can talk about. But for many, many important uses, sodium is looking like a very viable, very strong alternative. And like we said, it's already starting to happen.
It's already happening. Okay. So maybe walk me through the basics. How do these sodium-ion batteries actually work? Is the science totally different?
Actually, no. The basic principle is surprisingly similar to lithium-ion.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In both battery types, you store and release energy by moving charged particles, ions, between two ends, the electrodes, a positive and a negative one.
Okay, ions moving back and forth.
Exactly. The fundamental difference, down at the atomic level, is just which ion is doing the moving. So instead of lithium ions shuffling back and forth, it's sodium ions carrying the charge.
So same game, different player, basically. Sodium ions instead of lithium ions.
You got it. Think of it like two different teams playing the same sport, just with slightly different players.
Okay, makes sense. But our source did flag a current limitation, something about the sodium ions themselves?
Yes, that's the energy density point I mentioned. Because sodium ions are physically larger and heavier than lithium ions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it means they currently result in a battery that packs less punch for the same size and weight.
Less energy dense.
Right. Think of it like packing suitcases, maybe. Lithium ions are smaller, more compact, so right now you can cram more energy stuff into the same size suitcase compared to the bigger sodium ions.
Ah, okay. So a sodium battery of the same physical size might not last as long on one charge or power something as intensely?
For now, generally speaking, yes, that's the trade-off currently. Lower energy density compared to lithium.
Okay, that definitely seems like a big deal, especially for things where size and weight are absolutely critical, like, our smartphones or those high-performance long-range EVs.
That's a fair point, and it's true for those specific applications right now.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Go on.
Sodium batteries offer another huge advantage. They completely eliminate the need for some other expensive and often controversially sourced materials, like cobalt and nickel, and other rare earth elements that you find in many common lithium-ion chemistries.
No cobalt or nickel, that's massive. Not just for cost, but ethically too, right? Considering where those materials often come from.
Exactly. It simplifies the materials needed, which helps with cost, and makes the supply chain much more secure and, frankly, more ethical.
Okay, that's a big plus. What else?
Well, beyond that, sodium-ion tech has shown it performs pretty well in cold weather, which can be an issue for some lithium types. They're also generally seen as safer. They're non-flammable.
Safer is always good with batteries.
Definitely. And they seem particularly well suited for those big stationary energy storage projects. Think grid-scale batteries.
Ah, like storing energy from solar farms or wind turbines.
Precisely. In those situations, the absolute smallest size or lightest weight isn't the top priority. Reliability, cost, and safety are key. And that's where sodium could really shine.
So it sounds like lithium keeps its crown for, say, our phones and the fanciest EVs for now.
Probably, yes, for high energy density needs.
But sodium is positioning itself to take over some really big, important markets. Our sources mention things like electric scooters, that grid storage we just talked about, maybe two-wheelers in general, backup power for renewables, and even more budget-friendly EVs.
Exactly. It's less about a total replacement everywhere and more about matching the technology's specific strengths, low cost, abundance, safety to the right applications. And those applications represent huge markets.
Right, so the key insight is sodium isn't trying to beat lithium at its own game in every single area, but it's carving out its own very significant niches.
Precisely. And this isn't just theory or lab work anymore. We are actually seeing the first waves of what people are calling the sodium revolution. It's starting.
Okay, tell me more. Who's making real moves here? Give me some examples.
Okay, well, get this. The world's largest battery manufacturer, CATL in China.
CATL, they supply Tesla, right? And BMW, Hyundai, loads of big names.
The very same. They officially launched their first commercial sodium-ion battery back in 2023.
Wow. So the biggest player in lithium is now commercially producing sodium batteries.
Yes, that's a massive signal. It's a huge validation of the technology's potential when a dominant player like CATL makes that kind of move. It says, okay, this is serious.
Yeah, it is a serious endorsement. What about outside China? Anyone else making big bets?
Definitely. There's a UK-based company, Faradion, They've actually been working on sodium-ion tech since way back in 2010, real pioneers,
Okay, so they've been at it a while.
a long while.
Mhm.
And in 2021, guess who bought them?
Who?
Reliance Industries, Mukesh Ambani's company. They acquired Faradion for about 1,000 crore.
Reliance bought them. Interesting. What are they planning?
Well, following that acquisition, Reliance announced pretty ambitious plans to set up India's first sodium-ion battery gigafactory.
India's first. That's huge news.
It really is. It signals a major shift, right? India moving from just being a massive user of imported batteries to potentially becoming a major maker of its own.
From user to maker.
As one source put it quite proudly, India won't just be using batteries, it will be making them. That's a strategic game changer for India's energy future.
Absolutely. A huge turn in the story. From being 99% dependent to aiming for self-sufficiency. Are there other players globally we should know about?
Oh yeah, the momentum is building elsewhere too. In the US, there's a company called Natron Energy. They've got backing from Chevron, the big energy company.
Okay, oil and gas money moving into sodium batteries.
Seems like it. Natron is already running commercial pilot projects. They're putting their sodium batteries into things like data centers and for telecom backup power, key infrastructure.
So real-world applications are starting to pop up.
Exactly. And like our source said, Arebito game shuru hai. This is really just the beginning of a much bigger wave.
Okay, so focusing back on India then, beyond Reliance's huge investment, what other built-in advantages does India have in this, sodium race?
India actually has several things going for it. First, as we discussed, those vast sodium reserves, especially along the coasts and saline lakes. Our source called them sodium K treasure chest. Sodium treasure chest.
Right, the raw material is abundant domestically.
Exactly. Second, India's going big on renewables, right? Solar, wind, growing incredibly fast.
Yeah, massive installations happening.
But the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. So to make the most of that clean energy, you need affordable, reliable storage. Lots of it. And sodium batteries look like a really good fit for that exact need.
Linking renewables growth directly to the need for storage like sodium ion. Makes sense.
Third, India has a pretty dynamic startup scene, plus strong research institutions. Think about the IITs, the Defense Research Agency, DRDO, and innovative companies like Altigreen. They're already working on homegrown sodium-ion tech.
So there's R&D happening on the ground already.
Yes. Put all that together, the raw materials, the huge domestic need for storage, and the growing R&D ecosystem, it positions India pretty well.
It really does feel like the stars could be aligning for India here. But the biggest prize, the one our sources kept coming back to, seems to be achieving battery independence.
That's the core strategic goal, absolutely. If India plays its cards right, invests smartly in sodium-ion R&D and manufacturing, it has a genuine chance to break free from that heavy reliance on lithium imports we talked about.
That would be huge.
It represents a massive leap, moving beyond just assembling things under Make in India to actually powering the nation with homegrown tech, Power India. The potential for energy independence is strategically enormous.
Our sources even got quite aspirational about it, didn't they? Drawing parallels to other big Indian achievements.
They did. They brought up things like Mangalyaan, India's Mars mission, and developing what many call the world's cheapest nuclear reactor.
Right, showing what India can do technologically.
Exactly. And the underlying question was powerful. So why can't India become a global leader in sodium-ion battery technology? It really taps into that sense of national pride and capability. It says, we've done amazing things before, why not this?
It's definitely exciting to think about that potential. But to be fair, our sources also offered a balanced view. They highlighted the challenges that still exist.
And it's crucial we acknowledge those. We need a realistic perspective.
Oh.
Sodium-ion tech, while promising, is still pretty early in terms of large-scale commercial rollout.
Okay, like what specifically?
Well, as we touched on, that lower energy density compared to mature lithium-ion is still a factor. That needs more R&D work.
Right, closing that gap.
Then there's the challenge of scaling up, going from pilot projects or initial factories to true mass production that can meet potentially huge demand. That takes time, significant investment. Estimates are maybe 2 to 3 years to really get there at scale.
2 to 3 years. Okay, not immediate then.
No. And finally, you have to convince industries like the EV market, which moves incredibly fast, to actually adopt a new battery tech widely. That means proving reliability, performance, cost-effectiveness over the long term. It's not always easy to shift established players.
Those are definitely significant hurdles. Need more R&D, need massive scaling, need market acceptance. But, as our sources also reminded us,
Right. Pretty much every major technological leap in history looked daunting at first, didn't it?
true.
Think about the early internet, or even how much skepticism there was around EVs themselves just a decade or so ago. Overcoming these initial bumps is just, well, part of the innovation journey.
Okay, so let's bring it back home to the core question, really. And this is for you, our listener, as well. To Absol Ops. Can India really step up and become a leader in this sodium-ion revolution?
Will we stay mainly as battery consumers, importing the tech? Or can India become a major battery exporter this time around?
The potential certainly seems to be there. Our sources suggest that with the right mix-focused R&D, supportive government policies, smart investments, sodium could genuinely represent a trillion-dollar opportunity for India.
$1 trillion opportunity. That's quite something.
It really feels like sodium could be more than just, a substitute for lithium the way it's being framed.
Mm.
It sounds like it could level the playing field somehow.
Absolutely. Our sources use strong words. They called sodium a potential equalizer, a democratizer in energy storage, giving countries without lithium reserves a real shot.
An equalizer and democratizer.
And maybe, just maybe, the game changer India has been waiting for, a path towards real energy independence and global tech leadership.
So, final thought for everyone listening. What do you think? Kya India jeet sakta hai? Yes, sodium race. Can India win this sodium race? It's definitely something big to think about.
It really is.
And hey, if you found this deep dive into sodium ion interesting, maybe share it. Share it with anyone you know who's maybe still only thinking about lithium. Because, as our sources hinted, sodium might just be Kal Ka hero, tomorrow's hero.